Well, it's high time for a coffee and cleaners. Happy almost Thursday. Well, we're just going to set that someplace besides on my folder. As a result of my overwhelming response to my latest Arco wand video, I thought I would make this on the Arco wand literature that I have. That video has over 200 views at the moment, yet I have not received my gold-plated play button from YouTube. Very disappointed. Okay, so the first thing is the original sheet that would have been provided with the Arco wand machine, the Model 341, that you were supposed to put up next to the machine in the basement. And this goes over the simple rules for running. Shows you how to oil it. They also were good about labeling on the machine itself where you were supposed to oil. 2 motor bearings, 2 pump bearings, and the gears and the coupling. And the dust bucket, empty dust bucket as often as necessary. That bucket holds probably a month's worth of dirt-ish. Not that you can really cause machine damage by overfilling, because it has a cloth filter that takes up the whole height of the inside of this thing. Cleaning the screen. This is the cloth. It's a cloth bag, but they called it the screen. It's not a mesh screen like a Spencer or a Tuek would have. This is kind of what I touched on in that video. All inlet couplings must be closed. Start the machine. Hold the relief valve closed. And this says by pulling upward on the stem. In fact, on my machine, that relief valve faces downward, so you would pull downward on it until the motor begins to slow down and stop the motor. And because there's a check valve right here, that means that this is going to stay under negative pressure. And then it says then once you've shut the machine off, you press down on that valve and you'll get a little puff of air coming back through into the machine, and the opposite way through the screen, through the bag, which should kind of push a little bit of the dust off of it. I've tried that, and it's probably not very effective, but I guess it got the job done. That screen is so big, so much surface area, that even if it's dirty, the thing is moving as much air as it can move. Clean the screen at least once each month. So yeah, empty the bucket, clean the screen once a month. Keep in mind that these maintenance directions were geared toward, if you've never had a built-in vacuum before, you were removing, or any kind of vacuum for that matter, you were removing a lot of dirt at once. And they wanted to make sure that you knew that you couldn't just let this thing go for months and months and months. And a quick note about the electrical connections. If at any time the motor does not start upon operating, a switch, first see that knife switch near the machine is closed. A lot of times in pictures of these units in their original installation, you'll see a big knife switch on the wall. And that is not to start the vacuum, that's just a disconnect switch for servicing. And oftentimes there will be fuses along with it. So that's that. And these tags would have come on the motor. Switch to start and stop the motor must be placed within reach of relief valve on vacuum cleaner. And that has to do with cleaning the filter, as you just saw. And this is how you wire a 4-wire dual voltage repulsion start motor. There are 2 sets of windings inside the motor, and you either connect them in parallel for 120 volts or series for 240 volts. So basically each winding needs to get 120 volts one way or the other. Most all of these machines that I come in contact with have been wired for 240, because if your house was forward thinking enough to have a built-in vacuum, you had 240 volt electrical service. And we can just barely see the little card that shows the voltage and the amp rating and the fuses that they're recommending. And now this one shows you how you reverse the rotation of the motor. And of course, it only can run one way if you're going to actually use it as a vacuum cleaner. But if that thing were to slip and move, should this setting become changed in transit or otherwise, loosen the 2 set screws and adjust to proper position. Keep attached brushes for repairs. So attached to this would have been an extra set of brushes. And those took so long to wear down. It's so funny to me that they gave you extra brushes. I've got a picture somewhere of somebody who found this Arco wand in their basement, an Arco wand, not this one. But there was a little box that had spare inlet couplings and grease and a wrench to turn the inlet couplings in and motor brushes, and it was all this stuff. It was really cool. This is just an extra set of decals for the unit. That this is a modern reproduction, and that's a little hint of a future video here. And finally, here is an Arco wand magazine ad. There were a lot of magazine ads done for Arco wand machines, and they all had kind of a different theme. And I think, to their credit, it was less all about the machine and more about what it would do for you and your house, which is good. That's a good approach. Sell the benefit, not the sell the hole, not the drill bit. Finishes the cleaning in the time it formerly took to get ready to do it with dust cap, apron, dusters, and brooms. Yeah, ever since I started using my Arco wand, I no longer wear an apron. And here finally is the book, the original Arco wand book. And this is from an early Arco wand machine with the 2 buckets. For permanent installation in cottages, mansions, offices, stores, schools, churches, hotels, banks, theaters, post offices, on and on and on. This is curious to me because the Arco wands were single-user machines. And they're listing places that would obviously need more than a one-sweeper system. Strong suction swiftly and silently draws all dirt, fuzzy dust, paper bits, thread, lint, cobwebs, moths, bugs, germs, trash, etc. Any trash that'll fit through a hose that's like that big on the inside. Down to the sealed bucket. After removal of dust, etc., clean but vitiated air is expelled outdoors. That's a word you don't hear anymore. I don't even know exactly what that means. Faults of early machines. Other machines so noisy in operation that they are nerve-wracking. Few machines do not gather all the dust, but pipe the greatest part of the dust to sewer connection or chimney flue. So they're picking on the machines like, well, Spencer and Tuek is who they're picking on. And there were other units that actually were wet separated, and they did send all the dirt into the sewer. Hose couplings. Naturally falls to the heating or plumbing contractor to put in the simple suction piping at the time the building is being outfitted with radiator heating or plumbing. And that's why this was sold by the American Radiator Company. Soft bristle duster. Look at the size of that dusting brush. Renovator. A lot of times the nozzles, like for cleaning upholstery and carpet, weren't called nozzles or tools, they were called renovators. And they were, vacuum cleaning was, in the real early days, thought of much as wet carpet cleaning was today. And you've probably heard of the truck-mounted vacuum cleaners that would pull up to your house and run the hoses in through the door and renovate your carpets in place. But if you had this in your house, you could do it yourself as often as you wanted. Cleaning tools are so light and shapely, it is child's play to use them. The hose is small and light to handle. It is not heavy like a garden hose, nor big and clumsy like that furnished with some competitive vacuum cleaners. So this goes through from step one, from getting the hose out and plugging it in. She puts the duster on the end of a lightweight wand or handle, easy as slipping on a thimble. Turns a nearby switch. Moves the duster lightly over the ceiling and walls, moldings, tops of doors and window frames, picture frames, etc., over the tops of tables and hard surfaces. So they're taking some time to explain the process. Cleans in the natural order, slips on and off each of the tools in turn as she cleans in natural order from top to bottom of the room. Also necessary to a well-rounded domestic life. Arco wand helps solve the vexed servant question. Look at that. Would that be a Model T Ford? Hard to say. Right era, right? 12-inch Renovator. Real narrow slot, because these machines only move 30 some CFM. So in order to give the velocity to clean, you had to provide a slot that was only about 1/8 of an inch wide. Once again, sort of like a carpet cleaning wand. You'll have to get out, is the cry of old-fashioned broom duster method of cleaning. Don't disturb yourself. Does not put out the folks, only the dirt. We haven't yet seen anything about the machine. These wands didn't yet have a bend at the handle. The straight hose end went into the wand, and I imagine those hoses didn't last very long. They have also proved, what is that? Qatar. I guess I could have researched this, couldn't I? It has been said that no community can claim to be quite civilized if it continues to spend the people's money to buy feather dusters for its public buildings. Look at that. kind of a small theater. So you could use a single operator unit to clean something like that. Efficient aid to disinfection during and after the run of any contagious disease, as strong disinfecting liquids may be placed in the water bucket of the machine to kill the germs drawn there with the air from the sick rooms. Within a year after printing this, the machines would no longer come with a water bucket. Ventilation authorities agree that each person requires 30 cubic feet of fresh air per minute. The number 351 Arco wand machine, for instance, in doing its cleaning work will draw in about 40 cubic feet of air per minute, or in a half hour's use will entirely change the atmospheric contents of the ordinary room. They suggested here that the unit would work as a kind of a whole house ventilator system too, which is kind of amusing. Apartment buildings. Where the building has 2 or more families, the customary plan is for the janitor to deliver the cleaning tools to each tenant in turn. In this way, one cleaner dash machine can serve in an apartment building, each of the several tenants having the use of the cleaning service a definite part of the time. It's funny, in old photographs, like you can tell this was a picture of the guy with the wand and the hose. But in this picture, the wand and the hose appear to be drawn in. A lot of old pictures will have that evident retouching. Like that wand looks like it's been drawn in too. Maybe it didn't show up as well on the photograph. So here we get to the machine. Now this is the earlier type of Arco wand unit, where you can see that the separator and the screen and the bucket are very similar, but the second bucket gives away that this is the earlier type of machine, and also the motor being mounted on the side and belt driven. And this motor would be the 1750 RPM motor, and this pulley on the motor would be slightly smaller than the pulley on the pump to enable the pump to run at a slightly slower RPM. And the reason for the bucket of water was that the pump suction would draw a little bit of the water up through it, and the water passing through the impellers right here would seal the gaps between them, because they run with a very small tolerance between them. They're not actually touching. They're not supposed to. And that would increase the suction. And they also used to say that if the machine were installed in an area that wasn't heated, then you would close the water valve and you would run the system dry. Now cleaned air passes from the pump into the muffler. So this section here above the water bucket would have been the muffler. Pump casing and impellers are of non-rust material, so water spray does not affect. I guess they would have been bronze. The electric motor can be used for running other labor-saving devices by merely slipping off the belt. This was a common theme in the 1910s, like the first thing you bought for your house that had an electric motor, like the washing machine or the whatever. They often said, you can use the motor for other stuff. And I wonder how often that was attempted. That's kind of like the Kirby vacuum guy saying that you can spray paint your house with your vacuum. We'll get right on that. Cost of operation runs from 3.5 to 15 cents per hour. So this would have been a 1 horsepower motor that drew probably, I don't know, 8 amps at 100 and, no, 8, probably 8 amps at 240. So you can figure out the average electric rate at that time and adjust it for inflation. I bet this is a lot higher than our electric rates today, and that stands to reason. Cost of electric current for cleaning an average house will run from 15 to 25 cents per week. Yeah, vacuum gauge up there, relief valve, check valve, your pump, intake on the left, exhaust pipe on the right. A lot of these were exhausted into the chimney flue, but a lot of them also were just vented into the basement, like the one I've got with the upside down P trap on it. So you got a 35-foot 1-inch rubber hose, a wand, a felt Renovator 12-inch, a 10-inch Renovator for carpets, 4-inch for upholstery, your crevice tool, which they called, I guess, a tuft cleaner, and this would be the duster. Yeah. Or you could get equipment B, again a 35-foot hose, a wand for floors, and then another wand for high dusting, as well as they call this a duster, but it's a different kind of duster. I wonder if they made a mistake with equipment A, showing what looked to me like a floor or wall brush. 4-inch Renovator, adjustable suction type. So if you look at this Renovator, see the little holes you could turn and adjust the suction, because some rugs it would just stick to. And this equipment C, this would have been with the larger size machines, as you can see here. And they gave you either 2 25-foot hoses or 1 50-foot hose. And if you note the 50-foot hose, it shows as being metallic. So if you look here, Electrolux, the first Electrolux canister, the Model 5, came with a similar metallic hose. Kind of interesting. Looks like flexible electrical conduit. Or essentially it would be a bigger version of the handheld shower hose. So I guess it would have rubber on the inside, because I don't think they could rely on the metal spirals to hold air. And this one, they gave you the 4-inch adjustable suction Renovator and also a 12-inch adjustable suction Renovator. It is usually necessary to have but one pipe run in partition near the center of the house. So 35-foot hose, one inlet in the middle. And for bigger houses, you just used a longer hose. It was only when you got into some real big custom work, mansions and buildings and such, that you would have multiple inlet risers typically. Can with a few hours work be run through partition, unused chimney flue, ventilating flues, closet, or other out-of-the-way place? Wouldn't that be something to see a building that had been retrofitted in the 1910s with a central vacuum? That'd be wild. The Arco wand vacuum cleaner is simplicity itself. There are only 3 connections to be made, one to connect the machine to the piping from the rooms above, one for the air discharge or exhaust pipe leading outdoors, and one for electricity in the form of insulated wires to attach to the motor. That's another crazy thing in these days, that you didn't run conduit or flexible conduit to a junction box on the motor. the motor wires were just sticking out of the motor, and so you were supposed to run conduit to within a few inches and terminate it in a fitting, and then the wires themselves were supposed to go in free air from that conduit fitting to the motor, and that was for vibration. And here are your... By a few years later, the Arco wand machines were being advertised for sale for $150. So they were quite a bit more expensive at first. 42 CFM, 1/2 horse electric motor. 3/4 horse moves 42 CFM also, so this would have been a little bit higher suction because the air movement's the same. And the big guy moves 65 CFM using a 1.5 horse motor. And the 2 horse motor, the biggest machine they made, moves 80 CFM. And 80 CFM is about what you really want when you're using an 1 3/8 or 1.5 hose. That was really good performance, but obviously they felt it was overkill for a residence. Purchaser of any of these above machines desires omitted the electric motor, motor bracket, and belt so that gasoline engine or other form of power can be used. In case purchaser already possesses an electric motor doing other labor-saving work, and which can, as occasion requires, be connected up to cleaner machine. Inlet couplings. Data needed for estimate. The electric power to operate the vacuum cleaning machine will be furnished by... So instead of you knowing what kind of power you had, you just gave your electric utility name and they would figure it out for you. I do believe American Radiator is no longer at this address. Any of the company's public showrooms. So these places would have had on display radiators and boilers and obviously the Arco wand vacuum cleaner. Wow. And there you have it. So I hope you enjoyed this look at my Arco wand literature. And as always, happy vacuuming.